Sorry about that.
No worries, Dave. Totally understand. So we are gathered here today for a Kids Comics Unite event, which I've never done before, but it was Abby's idea. And where should I start? Um, so Abby Denson is the creator of Kitty Sweet Tooth. Is that right? Yes. And Dave Roman is the creator of Astronaut Academy. Both of these books came out from First Second on Tuesday of this week. Actually, Astronaut Academy is a series, so this is book 3, right, Dave?
Correct.
Yeah. So book 3 came out on Tuesday of this week. So these are brand new books that just came out, and we're here to celebrate. So I thought it'd be so cool. It's like a total win-win because I can support Abby and Dave by introducing all you guys to their books, and at the same time they can tell you sort of the behind the scenes stories of how they got started, what how they got their book deal for these particular books, what their creative process is like. So that's why we're doing this event today, and I'm thinking, like, if this goes well, maybe we can do these things once a month with graphic novelists who have a new book coming out. So we have to make this event really awesome so that we do it again. I just want to introduce Abby and Dave by saying that I have known Abby and Dave kind of since I got started almost in kids graphic novels. I think we've known each other since like 2000.
Since the 70s.
Since the 70s. Yeah, a long, long time. And Abby is sort of semi-responsible for Kids Comics Unite even being in existence because Abby and Gina Gagliano are the founders of the Women in Comics group in New York. Is that right, Abby? Am I correct?
Well, it's more just like it's like an informal social gathering. It's not like an official organization.
Yeah.
But yeah, women, we do meetups with mostly women we knew in who are in the comics and graphic novel industry, and they're just more kind of like networking hangouts, but they aren't really. It's not like an organization exactly.
Right. Okay, an informal networking hangout thing that I've been to.
Yeah. You guys are not paying taxes on the.
Yeah. and
we
so
apparently are. No, no, we're not paying.
Yeah, I don't think there's any. It's not a. It's very informal.
We made no profit, so there's no tax. It's basically just planning events every once in a while for people to hang out at.
Exactly. So I went to your event, or I've been to the thing, whatever it is, in the past, and I always thought it was so fun, and it's just good to get together and connect with other people in the industry and make friends and get advice. And so then I thought, last year when I was really planning the launch of my agency, I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if I start a kids graphic novel meetup kind of thingy so that I can get back in into the swing of things, because I'd sort of been out of the industry for a number of years. And so I started this thing called Kids Comics Meetup, and that was the first meeting was December of 2019. And I really quickly realized after the first meeting, it would be nice if we had an online place where we could just keep the conversation going. And then I found Mighty Networks, and then I started Kids Comics Unite. Then the pandemic happened, and it started to grow. And so I kind of, the line goes back to Abby from me getting the idea from Abby's cool hangout thing. So I think it's really wonderful that Abby came to me, about a month and a half ago to say, like, hey, I have a new book coming out. Maybe we could do something. And so that's why we're here today. So I would love it if Abby and Dave, I think what we'll start off with is just you guys telling us about your books. And then I'll ask you a couple of questions. But then most of the rest of the time that we're together will just be questions from those of us here, in the audience. Feels funny to say audience. So maybe, Abby, you could start by telling us what is Kitty Sweet Tooth. And then once you're done, then Dave, you can tell us what is Astronaut Academy.
Sure, thanks. Hi, everybody. So Kitty Sweet Tooth is a graphic novel about a cat who manages a movie theater that serves magical and scientifically experimented desserts that are matched to the B movies she screens at her theater, and they're made by a witch and a scientist, not mad, but misunderstood scientist. And every time a screening occurs, something weird happens with the food that results in crazy times for everybody, and it's a fun adventure. I made this based on I'm a longtime fan of B movies and cult and camp movies, and that's just one of my hobbies, I guess, outside of comics, is being into movies and going to screenings and things. And I, enjoyed going to places like Alamo Drafthouse and Nighthawk Cinema, and I just wanted to kind of combine my love with movies and my love with desserts, because some people here might know that I also used to run a dessert blog called City Sweet Tooth. So, and I was always abreast of keeping up with what kind of weird desserts were going on out in the world in reality. So some of that all inspired Kitty Sweet Tooth. And Kitty Sweet Tooth is a character that has been around for a really long time for me, probably more than 10 years. And she's a bit of like an alter ego, or she's kind of a character I use for my own feelings. I use her for drawing travel comics sometimes. Um, and she's featured in my previous two books, Cool Japan Guide and Cool Tokyo Guide, as sort of like a cartoon character that helps teach people about things going on in Japan, or sometimes she teaches phrases and things. But this is the first time another artist is drawing her, and it's been so fun to show that. So should I show some slides? I did have some slides here.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. I'll show the Kitty Sweet Tooth related slides.
Oh, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Apparently muted me automatically once I started
Okay.
It's to keep
All
you
right,
from...
we figured it out soon enough to avoid disaster. So Kitty Sweet Tooth, this is the cover. The artist Utomaru is a complete genius. What's great about working with another artist is I can brag unabashedly about how amazing this book is, and everyone should buy it, because it's hard to do. It's hard to do it when it's your own book, and it's hard. It might feel uncomfortable, but if it's someone else's work who you admire, it's very easy to. So she's really amazing, and we met randomly in Tokyo one night. I went to a bar that was themed after the horror movie Suspiria, and she was there, and we became friends. And years after we met, I was thinking of pitching this story to for second, and I thought, Utomaru might be a good artist to do this with. And this is her first comic, and it's her first U.S. job. So she's an illustrator, and she has done character design for anime, mostly for J-pop videos, but it was just announced that she's the character designer for Mute King, the Dancing Hero, which is an upcoming anime show. So good timing, because that just got announced this month too. So that's what the cover looks like. And let's see what we got here. It's gonna let me, there we go. So this is what I drew in 2014. This was my imagination of this book. So like this idea has been around in my head for a long time. This is a photo from my sketchbook. And it actually has a lot from this is directly in the story. So if you read the story, I have Planet of the Crepes. Planet of the Crepes is a movie in the story that finally happened. The theater is called Taste-O-Rama. And this is just basically what my fantasy was of the comic in 2014. And at that time I was like, well, maybe I'll draw it or make a mini comic or something. And so here's another, this is from 2014 also. So this is the little gag comic I did about it. And you can see it has the same characters, which is Dr. Bettina, who's the scientist, and Wally Witch, who's like the witchy baker. So it's very psychedelic, which is what I wanted in this story for the art. And here, when I was pitching it, on the left side, that's my versions of the characters. And I sent this to Utomaru, and then she came up with the art on the right side. And this was part of our pitch to First Second. So you could see, like, her takes on my characters are very different, but you can also, see it's the same sort of source material and the same vibe of the characters. And this was like when we were doing the book design, cover design, and I just banged this out. That's my art on the left side. So, and then look what we got on the right side. It's amazing. that goes to show you, sometimes you just want to have the ideas, and even if, the art is going to be totally different than what the final artist is going to do, or even what you're going to do, it can really help just to have a sketchbook to just kind of throw these ideas out, see how it looks, and you can bring it to a totally different conclusion. But it did end up basically kind of like this sketch, which is, I was like, I wanted to have her with the film. I want the film to be coming out of the canister. I want to have the, witch and the mad scientist, and she's holding a cake in her hand. And this all eventually came true in the real cover. So again, this is like probably not typical of what a writer alone would do. But I've had like more than 20 years of experience drawing my own comics. And Dave, I'm sure, can speak to this too. So when you bring that, you definitely have your own things visualized, and you have that language that you've already honed. And it's really nice to be able to share that with another artist who can complete your vision in a way. So let's see what else. Oh, and this is what I did with the panel layouts. So it was her first time drawing a graphic novel. She had most of her experience with illustration, which people probably in this group know this, but it's totally different than being a cartoonist, because, in illustration, you're talking about a single piece of art, but cartooning is narrative. So you have to have the panels and the art be able to tell the story. And there are a lot of constrictions on that, but you need enough space, you need to have the eye travel in the right direction, all of that. So this is what I gave her, especially because she wasn't accustomed to drawing comics, and she also wasn't accustomed to drawing comics Western order, which is different than Japanese reading order. So I made sure to number each panel so she knew which one was going where. Let's see what's next. Okay, and this is just another cool piece of art she did. I think something like this was also on our pitch pages. Let me think. I don't know if I think the rest of this. Oh, and I wanted to just give a shout out in memoriam of my grandfather, who this character is based on. So my Pop-Pop, this is completely based on my grandfather, Kitty Sweet Tooth's grandfather. My grandfather loved cats, he loved movies, and he loved sweets. Like, he had a much bigger sweet tooth than even me. So I made him run a candy shop and a movie theater and be a cat. And I think he would have really liked that. So I was really happy how that came through. Oh, so I will stop sharing now, because that's the little Kitty Sweet Tooth section.
Awesome. Okay. So Dave, you want to show us whatever you have about Astronaut Academy?
Sure. So do I just do a screen share?
Yeah.
All right. I like what you said about all roads leading back to Abby, because I feel like that is the case for me as well. Because Abby and I met when I was in art school and became friends. What do I do? Hit slideshow?
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yep.
You see the slides?
Yes.
Awesome. So I was in art school of visual arts. I met my friend John Green, who now does the Investigator series. We started self-publishing comics together with the Quick and Forbidden series. This was actually started as a class project that we then funded the self-publishing of, and then distribution through Diamond and all that stuff. Black and white comics, sort of pre-graphic novel boom. So like a lot of people were like, what are these pamphlets? It was like right as like the libraries were like, could you make this into a trade paperback? So we eventually did that, and that's kind of where it kind of got its legs. I didn't prepare properly, so I just have a few different slides from different things. My day job is editing graphics for first second books. I'm the series editor for the science comics books, which are nonfiction, generally meant to get kids really excited about science. And then I do the Astronaut Academy series, which is also published by First Seconds. And like you said, all 3 books actually came out Tuesday. So all new book 3 and then revamped versions of books 1 and 2. And it's been a while since I've pitched it, but so Astronaut Academy is about kids who go to school in outer space. It's basically a giant space station the size of the Death Star, and kids go to all sorts of sort of like wild and wacky classes. But in a lot of ways, it's just like a love letter to science fiction, video games that I grew up playing, and just an excuse to draw like sort of cute non sequitur stuff that I will tie back to Abby, because when I was, I think I had maybe just graduated college, Abby introduced me to a video game called Parappa the Rapper by Rodney Greenblatt was the designer for that game. And it was just such a mind-blowing experience. Like, one, playing this game, and just like it had this just beautifully cute visuals, and it kind of just like reinforced the idea that I could draw in this sort of like simpler, cuter style, and just sort of like embrace like, you know, the sort of aesthetic that I was like really into. So Astronaut Academy actually started out as mini comics that I self-published. Sold them for 50 cents at conventions, which I refer to as price to move, just because I want to get them into people's hands. And they were kind of like messages in a bottle going out into the world. Luckily, editor named, well, a couple of different editors ended up getting them, but specifically Callista Brill at First Second Books. We really connected at a conference, and she wanted to make books. And these were the original editions. They were really super shiny with foil covers, but they were in black and white. And that was a creative choice at the time. If you recall, back in 2010, even Scholastic and all the major publishers were publishing black and white comics for kids without even thinking about it. Like, we really hadn't cracked the code yet that comics should be in color for kids. And I think a lot of that was because the manga boom was still going really strong. So a lot of publishers were like, well, if manga's in black and white, we can do this too. So the first editions were in black and white, and I actually really liked them in black and white and had a lot of fun playing up the black and white qualities, trying to capture, again, B movies like Abby was talking about. Like, I love old science fiction movies. So I actually looked at a lot of old classic, like, you know, Martian movies and The Day the Earth Stood Still and stuff like that, to try to get like that sort of black and white, spacey, genre, you know, spacey vibe of old B movies. But the smartest thing that I did was I created the art in layers. So I could strip out the line art, and I had the line art saved. And this was very fortuitous because many years later, everyone would say, you know, these books really should be in color. Why aren't they in color? And they were right. So I started coloring some of the pages from the first book, and I started making a third book based on just basically enthusiasm from children that insisted there should be a third book. And I just started coloring it myself, which I had never colored a graphic novel before, except I colored a webcomic. So I was a little like figuring out how to color, and it was taking me a long time. And I realized, like, once I got the book deal for the third book, I realized there was no way I could color this thing myself. So I reached out to a bunch of different colorists, did some samples. So this was my original test. And then I sent that black and white page to an artist named Emmy Hernandez in Mexico, who I was a fan of. And she gave me back this. And this just was like, oh my God, like all those glowing effects and sort of mood lighting. Like, I was like, I don't think I know how to do that. My color was a little flatter. So that kind of changed the whole perspective of the series for me. And I started collaborating with different colorists to get all 3 of the books colored, not by me, which was great because I'm like blown away by how much more vivid and it just takes the art to a whole different level. That honestly, like Abby was saying, it's like, it's one thing to talk about yourself. I love talking about the colors because they really brought something special to it. And in a way, it's like more closer to what was in my head to begin with. So yeah, it goes from that to that. Yeah. I'll stop here too, just because I get nervous about over talking.
You know, I can you switch it back to the whole group?
Just stop sharing. Is that
Yeah.
You got it.
Okay, so I feel I have a few questions, but I honestly feel like I'd rather you guys ask the questions that are on the top of your mind. So, does anybody have a question for Dave and Abby?
This is just like my class I teach at SVA.
Well, I have a question for Abby.
Okay.
How long did it, the art, I went online, I checked a lot of pages out already. It's really intricate. It's really beautiful and layered. And how long did the artist take to do
She
this?
is like a total anomaly, but I'm pretty sure it was under 2 years. It might have been a year, but she works much faster. Like it's been a bit of a dream to work with Utomaru because she's not only were we friends and we have the same taste in movies and we're totally on the same wavelength. At the same time, she was very fast, much faster than I expected. But she's a total digital artist, so she doesn't do traditional art. It's all done with a Wacom, I'm pretty sure. So she was first doing what she called sketches, but the sketch art was very close to what I would make for my own like final art. But it wasn't anything like what her final art is, which is just amazing. So like her sketches were actually full color and had the line art, but they weren't with all of the effects and the shine and the gorgeousness that detail that is on her final art.
Yeah, it's great.
So yeah, I mean, I think about a year. I feel like averaging a year for like 100-page book is pretty okay, but her art is really detailed. Plus, she's busy. Like she was doing other stuff. She just did like a Nike campaign in Japan. She's been doing anime, stuff. So I just feel like really lucky that this even happened. And then when she first started, you know, turning around the sketches, how fast they were and how tight they were, I was just like, I can't even believe this is happening. So please don't expect that of any normal artist.
It looks like so much fun. It's just amazing. It's just, you sold me. I'm getting a copy.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, she said, like we chat with each other online pretty often, and she was saying we both inspire each other. So, especially because reality and the news had been like in the past 5 years. I guess I feel like we were making this in the past 3 or so years. There's a lot of tough stuff going on in the pandemic, and it's just been really rough globally. But days I'd get her art or she'd send me her sketches, I'd feel so good, and I would just always be messing her. I'm like, you're making me so happy with your art. She's like, your story is inspiring me. It's making me smile. And like, we felt really great about it. So
yeah.
I would like to, yeah, thanks. And I like to say also the theme of Kitty Sweet Tooth is about friends coming together to make something or create something for the enjoyment of their community. And I feel like that our reality is mirroring the comic. And I hope like we came together as friends and made this thing, and it's hopefully going to bring joy to everybody. So that's been really nice.
I think the timing couldn't be better because, we don't need dark, morbid stories. We need stories to make us happy. I think, and this is a happy story. I think it's fun.
Thank you. And
I think it's needed.
Thank you. And book 2 is going to come out, I think, end of next year. So there will be a second book.
Awesome.
I just want to second what you just said about Abby putting happiness into the world, because I feel like that's one of the reasons why I've always enjoyed being friends with Abby, is because your comics have been like that as long as I've known you. Like you've always been making sort of like these like upbeat, positive sort of, stories that just make you feel good. And back when you started, I don't think the world was as dark. It feels like the world got a lot darker. So I feel like your comics feel even brighter in contrast to that. And whether that's been through your music or whether that's been through your comics.
We're pumping it up. We're pumping it.
Yeah.
Time to pump it up.
Yeah.
No, I gotta give a shout out. Many thanks to Dave and also John Green on here too, because we are all longtime friends, and they've been endlessly supportive of everything I did. And I was starting, around 96. We were all doing mini comics, and I feel like, and I know Dave hooked me up with photocopies.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was when I worked at Staples.
Oh, I wasn't going to name them in case the statute of limitations.
Right, it's been long enough. It's been long enough. They can't come out.
Give me the hookup. He was hooking me up with copies, and I feel like coming from a DIY background, which is something we all share, really gave us a lot of tools to navigate where we are now. Because I know that Dave and I have been talking about it, and when it comes down to trying to promote a book with a publisher versus like what you do it yourself. Well, a lot of DIY comics is you're doing it yourself. You're out there telling everybody and trying to think outside of the box and around. You're trying to think around the fences, around the gates, and all over the place about how to do what you want. And then even if there's not a established way of it happening officially from a corporation, you can just do it. Like for instance, I was trying to promote Kitty Sweet Tooth during a pandemic, which is really tough, as I'm sure everyone imagines. Well, a couple of things I wanted to do, I wanted to make GIFs, and that was something that wasn't really in the PR official playbook. But I was like, I want kids to be able to share GIFs of Kitty Sweet Tooth, so I just figured out how to do it. I did it, and I think it's been fun. I mean, I don't know if it means that more people will buy it, but it brought me joy to have GIFs. So I did it, and I learned a lot of tools. I learned that, and I learned how to make a trailer, which I never did before. So now Kitty Sweet Tooth made me into a director, which I was not planning on. So
I also think it's really impressive to have the artist do 100 pages within 2 years. For me, it's maybe 80 or 90 pages for a little bit more than a year. So it is really impressive. And I had a question for Abby. I don't know any of your work, to be fair. Where did you start with, and when was the time when you started? What was the first real published album, and what was okay, now I made it, I can keep doing this as a living?
Well,
maybe Abby, you could answer that, and then Dave, I'd be curious to hear from both of you.
Yeah, but both, actually both. But because from Abby, I didn't see any previous work,
sure.
So I'm curious.
Yeah, so my first comic, I did a mini comic called Tough Love, and I actually have the compiled version here, but it's out of print right now. But so it's a long story, but so it was in 1996, and I was getting into manga, and I saw some Shonen Ai kind of BL, I guess you'd say, manga now, which is kind of a gay romance theme. And
I know every manga.
Okay, yeah. So I really wanted to make one that was a little bit more I want to make my own version of that was a little bit less of a soap opera, but with my own art, which is really inspired by Keith Haring and more not very detailed. So I wanted to do that. I did it as a mini comic, and I also, because I didn't come from a homophobic background, and I want to spread tolerance. So when I made the comic, it just was in that vein. So it ended up being, I sent my zine to a magazine called XY, which was an actual publication for gay teens, and they ended up picking it up and running it. So I was paid to have a monthly or bi-monthly comic in this magazine, and that was my first job. And I was in college when that happened. So I was doing that, but I also got into scripting comics, because through that and through networks like Friends of Lulu, which like Dave's familiar with too, I met editors, and I met Heidi McDonald, who was doing DC Kids comics at the time. So she gave me the opportunity, and I pitched to her to do the Powerpuff Girls scripting. So I was scripting for Powerpuff Girls and various other comics. And I think I did some for Dave, and I did some for John. So I got into doing scripting comics. And that was one thing I did. I've also like written for Archie and Simpsons comics and various other comics and Amazing Spider-Man Family, all that totally unrelated to my own stories. But I was able to use my own skills, and making your own stories proves you have the skills, so that the publishers can see you can tell a narrative story. So, even though my story was about gay teens in love, they knew ultimately I could also write about Sabrina the Teenage Witch or the Powerpuff Girls, because I knew how to do it. So that's one aspect. And then I just kind of like to do comics when I want to and what I want them to be about. So I am not a full-time creator. I think it's very hard to be a full-time creator, because you want to have insurance and things like that. In the US, that's not easy, which is fine. I have another job that like supports me, and then I can just do what I want with comics. But I think the dream of being a full-time creator is very hard to do, especially if you don't have like a spouse or someone else or some kind of backup money to support you through it. Because like, even if you get a publishing deal with a major company, it's not enough to live off for a year, basically. And it takes you more than a year to make a comic. And what about insurance? So you'd have to have a lot of plates spinning at once. And I think everybody's path to being a creator is different. But for me, it doesn't work for me to be worrying every month about where's my next paycheck. I don't want to live that way. And I want to be able to go places. Like I go to Japan every year when it's not a pandemic. Hopefully soon it'll be safe. So I kind of just approach my lifestyle that way, but it's totally different. Some people, they don't mind and they love and they can go for it and hustle every month. But I think also, especially as you get older, it's really tough. And it's really not fair. It's a terrible situation. Like, I don't think cartooning brings enough money for people to live off as a career a lot of the time. It's more work than illustrating, and it's more work than being a novelist. But yet, I don't think that the pay probably is like great. You have to be a really big seller and really popular, or be spinning a lot of plates at once. So I'm not trying to be a downer at all, but I think it's important to know those things when people are entering, because you can get really disillusioned if you don't have a really reality-based idea of what's going on with it,
No, I like the honesty, because I'm just starting. I'm 29 years old now, and I just started with my very first big comic with webtoon and everything, and it's published in the Netherlands, where I live. I also love Japan. Would love to go every year, and I read every manga. And I was also like, oh yeah, manga was all the hype, and I can do my comics in black and white. No way, I need to do it in color. Like that was the thing. But yeah. So, but I'm also curious that like you're also the artist of your work, or you're only the writer? Because I myself am writer and artist of my work, and I feel like it's very hard to be both the writer and the artist in a lot of ways, because sometimes in production in the Netherlands, they most of the times they don't really believe that you can do both. They're like, you need a writer, or you need, and I'm like, why not? Why can't you do both? Like I don't know if you did both, or
I think Dave has the same experience, has some experience in both, like I do. But yeah, sorry if it wasn't clear, but I do both. But in Kitty Sweet Tooth, I only wrote the script, and in my stories for like Spider-Man, I only wrote the script. But for my own personal, I won't say personal, for my own stories, and that would be Tough Love, Dolltopia, and Cool Japan Guide and Cool Tokyo Guide, I drew everything, I colored everything, and I wrote everything. So I'm a bit of a combination.
Okay.
So Dave, you want to tell your journey, your comics journey?
Yes, same questions. Go.
No, not at all. I just wanted to say real quick that you know, you're right about how much work comics is and how the money does not generally match the amount of work. I worked as an editor at Nickelodeon for many years and worked with a lot of animators and was constantly trying to get animators to make comics. Like that was my whole like, come on, animator, make comics. Comics are fun, aren't they? And they would be like, sure, but how much do you get paid to do that? And I was like, oh, well, we pay like a page rate of, you know, $35 a page or five, you know, Nickelodeon actually paid pretty well. So I can't, you know, speak to that, but a lot of, but even then, like, even so, like Nickelodeon paid way better than, let's say, like DC Comics did. Animators would be like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, there's no way. That's so much work. Like it took me forever to make this 2-page comic. No, man. Like, so it's always going to be the struggle that comics is like, you know, it's tough love. That's what it's about. It's a long, hard road to make comics. You got to do it because you love it, not because you think you're going to make money at it. And I wanted to answer a question I saw in the chat about whether or not you need to be agented. I think getting back to the DIY spirit, I think a lot of us don't have agents or didn't have agents until we had a book that was sellable. I think the project generally comes first. I feel like if you don't have a really sellable project, it's impossible to get an agent. Maybe it's different these days. I don't know, maybe there's a lot more agents or something, but I feel like for the longest time, it was really hard for most people to get agents until a publisher basically offered you a book deal. And then it's real easy to get an agent. Once you got the book deal offer, every agent's like, I'll be your agent. Great. All I have to do is read the contract, you know, tell them to give you more money and we're done. I feel like a lot of agents, Jana may be the exception, I don't know. Maybe you like doing more work and knocking on every door and, you know, begging people to happen. But I joke a little bit, but like it does feel that often most of the people I know didn't get an agent until their project was kind of ready to go. And a lot of that is like building your network, building your you know, your webcomic, your self-publishing thing, so that people see what you've done. And, you know, sometimes, like, I think a lot of people come out of school and they're like, I've got a pitch. And it's like, well, that's great. But like, you almost have to like build a reputation first and build like, you know, a network. And then that stuff happens. Although again, things are changing too. I know a lot of kids who have gotten book deals while they're still in college. So there's always exceptions to make people feel bad, but generally it feels like you have to do the work first and get your stuff out there as much as possible. And then everything kind of falls into place. The right agent will show up, the right publisher will show up, and all of it will kind of happen. And a lot of that's the stuff that I say you can't control. So what you can control is how many pages you're doing, how much work you're putting out into the world, what your website looks like, are you updating on a regular basis, all those kinds of things. Yeah. Sorry, I think I'm gonna.
Do you want to, Dave? Can you say a little bit about Astronaut Academy and
So very much like I'm saying. So like I self-published for years. I had the day job at Nickelodeon. It was great, but I was still self-publishing and working on my own comics at night. And I was very lucky. I have a lot of different lucky points in my life, but specifically with Astronaut Academy, I had started as a comic, actually Tintin, who I think I saw was in the group at one point, she was editing a shoujo manga anthology for School of Visual Arts. And she ran into me at like a book event or something and was like, hey, you're an SVA alumni. You should send me a comic for this thing. And I was like, oh, that's exciting and fun. So I did a 2-page comic for her and I loved it. Like I had so much fun doing it. And it was like, you know, one of those things where it's like, I didn't think it was going to be a series. I didn't think it would be the thing I'd be known for or whatever. It was actually very different from a lot of the other comics I was doing at the time, but I had so much fun doing it that I was like, oh, I just want to do more with this character and this world. So I started making the mini comics and then I started putting the mini comics online. And I think that was just, you know, luckily there's editors who are like keen-eyed and they're just going on the internet and looking up stuff all the time. And Astronaut Academy just got on the radar of an editor at Little Brown first. And they called me into a meeting and they were like, we really like your comics. they're not really for kids though, exactly. Like they had this like weird, like, we really like your stuff, but it's not exactly ready for prime time just yet. And they strangely said, like, we would love to publish this, but we would need a lot of work to sort of figure out how to do it. So that was like a really weird meeting, but that meeting allowed me to have the confidence to say, well, if I got a meeting with Little Brown, I could probably get a meeting with someone else. So then I started talking to agents. And I met Judy Hansen, who was Kazu Kibuishi's agent. And I was doing stuff for the Flight Anthology at the time. And Judy was basically just like, you know, happy to talk to anybody that was in the Flight Anthology. So once I told her, oh, Little Brown called me and brought me into this meeting, and she was like, oh, Dave, that's great. We could make this happen. You know, like that was like all she needed to think like, well, if Little Brown's interested, somebody else will be interested. So then she started showing it to other editors and helped me, you know, figure out like what we should pitch them. But even then, I think, you know, there's always this sort of like stuff needs to happen in the air. I ended up at a book conference where I got my own table. I was selling mini comics of Astronaut Academy, and I ended up at a big dinner with like 20 people. And one of those people was Callista Brill. And we just happened to sit next to each other, and we just hit it off, and we were just having tons of fun and joking around and da 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 da. And she was like, I think Judy Hansen pitched me something by you, but I haven't read it yet. And I was like, well, you should read it at some point. And then the next day she like went home, read it, and then called me up and was like, let's do this. Let's do a book. So the world has got lots of moving magical pieces that you can't control. But what you can do is, like I said, I put myself out there. I was sharing
totally.
stuff online.
You are doing something. Yes.
Right. I'm actively, you know, I put the web comics up. I was making mini comics. I made them cheap so that they would sell to lots of people. And I talked to strangers.
Yeah.
Okay. Rivka, you've had your hand up for a while.
Unmute. Hey, so Dave, I've been following you since I think SVA.
I did for that. I mean, I've been following you since Tokyo Pop days, but
yeah, that's about this. Yeah, it's been a while. I love your work, and it's awesome seeing Astronaut Academy getting like rocket fuel in it now. I feel like it's really starting to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it feels.
It's great seeing it because I remember when it first came out in black and white, and now it's getting the color treatment, and you've got new books. It's awesome. So I'm kind of curious if you could, both of you guys, both David and Abby, you could share sort of your experiences, how the industry has changed, because y'all have been at this a long time, from when you first started and then to now, and where you think it's going to go, because I feel like there's been some really big changes, especially in the last like 5-6 years. And I'm kind of curious how y'all think it's going to keep progressing.
Yeah, it has. I think that's the problem, is when you're around for so long. Like, I used to hate going to comic panels at conventions where like old comic creators would be like, back in my day, and like, you know, before Rob Liefeld came around, and, you know, all this kind of like, you know, the comic crash of the 90s. But I do feel like I'm turning into that person for sure. But it's a great time in a lot of ways. I think that, you know, the opportunities could not be greater for more people. I think that's a big difference. I think when I got to School of Visual Arts, I remember it was like, if you want to make comics, you either have to work for Marvel, DC. Newspapers were already dying by the time I went to art school. Web comics were just starting to become a thing. But even that felt like that's probably going to have a boom and bust. Manga was having like booms and busts. All this stuff was like kind of coming and going. But I think that librarians have been the key to all of it. I feel like librarians in some way figured out, like, you know, we could get kids excited about reading, and teachers then got on board. Like, they were the next wave where they're like, yeah, it's okay to let kids read graphic novels in schools. Why not? And that's how companies like Scholastic and Random House and First Second were able to sort of like, not just like dip their toe in the water, but basically go all in and really make this like a robust marketing thing to the world. And, you know, that's why the kids comics thing is such a boom right now. But that said, people like Dave Pilkey are making it really hard for us, because now it's this like expectation that we have to make 2 books a year. And like everybody wants like, and I'll blame Netflix as well, the whole binge culture, because everybody wants graphic novels like, give me more, give me more, give me more. Like all the kids are like ravenous, and they think that we can produce these 200-page graphic novels like nothing, you know, like it's just like, oh yeah, just make another book, just make another book, just make another book. So I think that's going to kill us, but that's the downside. But it's going to be fun. We're having so much fun till we run ourselves into the grounds. I'm looking at John Green here, who's following suit, making 2 books a year, making it hard for us. Like someone here was saying about like, you know, 80 pages a year. Like, yeah, that's a much more sane approach. Like 80 pages a year lets you go outside sometimes and like, you know, get fresh air, not be chained to your desk.
Abby, do you have any thoughts about the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think things have been really cool to see it all change over the years, because I know when I started out, I feel like especially women's global comic culture has really evolved in a way that is incredible to me. Like when I started, it wouldn't have been something I'd even imagine that this many, you know, comics would be out for and by women, and that's amazing. I think what needs to happen though is because it seems to me that all of this growth and, you know, major book publishing is centered around titles for kids, but the kids have been growing older. So ultimately, I really would like it, and I hope more publishers that are bigger might come out to be doing more things like Pantheon was doing, or you know, a Fantagraphics type, you know, title lineup, but from a big publisher. So I feel like if Macmillan is doing, you know, First Second, and a lot of what First Second actually has adult titles too, it's actually a pretty big mix. But I feel like there need to be more literary adult, you know, publishers that are going to be, you know, putting out comics for the kids that have been raised on, you know, graphics and First Second books, because I feel like there's a leap that needs to happen there. I'm hoping that's where it's going to go.
Yeah, I would also like to put in a plug for genre graphic novels for adults, you know, mystery, romance, comedy, like all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, I think Image has been doing some of that, you know, but yeah, I feel like, yeah, you know, there are a lot of adults out there who like horror movies, sci-fi and all that. And you know, stores like Oni, Lion Forge and Image, and they've been doing some of that, and they've been doing some of that for a long time. But I'm not sure if I feel like I quite have seen any of the majors coming in and taking that as they have, you know, been carrying the kids' graphic novel and comics lines.
Mhm. All right, JL, you've had your hand up for a super long time, so thank you for your patience.
Oh, thank you, Jana. This is a question for Dave. Dave, I saw a character of Spike in one of your sample pages, and I've always been curious about this Astronaut Academy character. You introduced him in Astronaut Elementary. Not all of his pages got into the shiny books, but is he a case study in how, you know, publishing for children has changed? Because Spike is a boy who likes boys.
I love the careful reading that you've done to know that difference of the pages that were and were not in the books. Yeah, I think it has changed a lot. I'll be honest, I don't know that there was like too much concern about Spike when the book was first published. There was probably a little concern, but not as much as you might think. And I think I could have pushed it a little bit further. I think we were nervous, but I don't think it was like a huge risk that I think we would have taken a bigger risk if we were. But to be honest, that the strips that I had done with Spike weren't originally for, like, those are actually for a gay comics anthology. I can't remember. I think it was Tim Fish or someone who had a gay comics anthology asked me to contribute to it. So I actually created those for that. And when I was doing the book, for some reason, those stories just didn't flow into the narrative exactly how I needed it to. And I always kind of hoped that I would get Spike more into it later. And he does appear like a little bit more in book 2 than he did in book 1. And in book 3, I feel like he's much more of a major character finally. But that's actually just more the beast of doing a series with like 30 characters. There's always someone who's getting a little bit shortchanged. And I think that that's, you know, it's always just going to sort of happen. But yeah, I do think that, I mean, now, like, yeah, everybody wants everything, you know, and everybody's ready for everything. And nothing, I don't know. I don't pay enough attention. You guys probably have a better sense of like what's getting banned these days, or what, you know, what librarians are having struggles with in terms of shelving. I know that that's always going to sort of come and go, and that there's going to be waves of that, but I feel like the diverse books movement has really changed so much for so many people. And I feel like, you know, as far as like from an editorial standpoint, like the difference is, like now, not only like, do we want authentic voices? Do we want diverse voice? You know, like it used to be that like, you know, maybe that could happen. Now like people are seeking it out. Like, it's a weird thing to say to people, but like I do portfolio reviews all the time, and I teach a portfolio class at School of Visual Arts. And it's a very delicate thing to say, like, lean into your, you know, identity, because that's what the market is looking for right now. You know, like I have like an African-American student who just wants to draw like fun Japanese comics, Japanese inspired manga comics. And I'm like, maybe you'll sell that, but like, honestly, manga outside of Japan has always had a little bit of a hard time. Whereas if you did a story about your African-American Dominican family, or, you know, something about your New York experience, you'd sell it in a heartbeat, you know, because that's like what the publishers are looking for right now. Now, granted, that might change in 10 years, you know, that's the part of like being in this game for 25 years is you see, you know, like we're having a window, and, you know, so if you really want to do like a memoir comic, now's the time. And if you really want to do like a really funny middle grade comic, now's the time. Like I would have loved to done whimsical, crazy middle grade stuff 10 years ago, but the market wasn't exactly there yet, you know, but it's there now. And who knows what the next market's going to be.
I saw some good questions in the chat, and I know we probably have to wrap it up pretty soon, but Janice, I think you had a question, and then Emily, are you guys here?
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi, my question is for Dave. So I'm wondering how you've balanced like editing full-time with making all these books, because I also work a full-time job and I'm trying to do comics at the same time. And I'm wondering, you talked about how, you know, Dave Pilkey puts out 2 books a year. I'm wondering if you have that kind of pressure to put out the next sequel, like the kids want it. Yeah, how do you, you know, before the kids get too old to read those books? Just wondering how you deal with that.
Well, the answer to how am I doing about it? Badly. I'm doing very badly. My therapist will tell you that I'm a people pleaser, and I always put other people before myself. So if I'm editing other graphic novels, I'm always going to put their graphic novels before my own, and that's kind of been a problem. It took me 3 years to make Astronaut Academy 3 because I was editing science comics and history comics, which I love. And that's the, you know, it is a hard, it's a great problem to have because they're great books, and I absolutely couldn't be prouder of being able to help make those books happen. But yes, like weeks will go by and I won't even like touch Astronaut Academy, and I won't even touch my own stuff. And I am working on follow-up stuff that is already running late because I'm constantly putting other people's books before my own, which I'm working on, but I have not figured out how to do it yet. But I will try for the kids. Yeah, it's hard. I think, you know, like Abby was saying, like so many people, you know, making comics can't be their full-time job. So, you know, how to just pour yourself completely into it would be great. I mean, Dave Pilkey, you know, he did like 20, you know, I mean, what was it, 20 Captain Underpants books before Dogman? And, you know, like, I mean, he's worked his butt off his whole life. And I couldn't be happier and, you know, and prouder. And I think that, you know, it's great. but I don't think that that's a sustainable model for everyone. And I think we have to kind of find like what works for us. And I don't think that, chase, as much as I joked about like, the trends in the market, I think we have to like step back from that stuff and figure out like what we can do, what's right for us, what is our voice, what is the stories we want to tell, and kind of tune out sometimes like what else is going on and the pressure of even like what our friends are doing. Because like a lot of my friends can draw 100 pages a year, no problem. I've never been that person. So I know. My publisher, so I can't talk about like what I'm doing next, but one of the questions that kept coming up was like, could you do all 3 books and then we'll release them on the same day like we did with the new Astronaut Academy books? And I was like, no, we cannot do that because it'll take me 6 years to make all 3 books. And then it's like nothing for 6 years. And then it's like, hooray, you have 3 new books all at once. Like it probably helps sell books. And again, it's that Netflix thing of just like every episode of a show just drops on one day. And that's sort of like what people are getting used to. But from a creative standpoint, it's like really, 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 really hard to do that. So I hope that trend doesn't take off.
Yeah, if I can chime in on this, I think that it's important to set boundaries in your life about things. Otherwise, you're not going to have any of your own space to do what you want or need to do. And I think that speaking as someone who is like a full-time job, it's like, well, it ends at 6. I'm not working after 6. They know that's not happening. And on the weekend, I'm just, so that it's kind of like, it's not the kind of job where I have to worry about it after my hours are over. And I think that it's good to have, if you're seeking that balance, to make those boundaries. Because if you end up in a situation where you're working, you're checking your work, and I have a separate work phone versus my personal phone, and I don't look at my work email when it's after 6 on a weekday. And a lot of people don't do that, and a lot of people can't set those boundaries. I think especially with like cell phones, the onset of that, and it kind of made the corporate culture creep into people's daily life and non-work lives. And I feel like you really have to fight to hold your own space. Otherwise, you're not going to have it, because you just won't. And so, and not to mention, especially people raising families. I mean, that's a whole other thing. But when it comes down to work and trying to make that time, you have to just kind of in your mind have a hard, boundary and be like, well, it's really important to me that I do a page a week. And for that to happen, I have to stop working and looking at my email at 6 and not look at it on the weekend. Because of course you also have to have time to rest and relax. If you don't have that, you're going to become sick. And that's going to stop you doing anything. And I feel like that, especially so many people who are familiar with manga, and like the work culture of manga in Japan is very toxic. And also they have assistants, and it's a whole other system. So we can't really compare ourselves to putting that kind of output. And I don't really know what Dave Pilkey's schedule is, but I'm just saying, you got to take a break. Otherwise,
He did take a break.
To make anything.
I think Dave did take a little break, didn't he? Jen,
Yeah.
did you know that? Like, right? Because he had like a little sabbatical for a little while.
I don't really know anything about his. I'm just saying everyone, not just Dave. Everybody needs to have time to rest and recharge. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to make anything, and you're not going to be good to anybody. But you have to like have that value within yourself and the value of your work to respect yourself and respect your own time. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to achieve what you want. And I was speaking about this at a show in Japan, actually, with some other international creators about comics and loving comics and wanting to continue to make comics. But it's hard to continue to love making comics if you don't set the boundaries and give yourselves a break, because you're just going to end up feeling like you're your own taskmaster in a dungeon doing this thing, and then you're never going to have any enjoyment.
I think everybody here is probably very excited about the future of comics, because as much as there are things to complain about, it's definitely more vibrant, I think, than it was 10 or 20 years ago, and it's continuing to grow. So that's something I'm very, very happy about. And I guess I do have to wrap it up. Abby, did you have the special prize thing? Are you interested? Tell me what's happening. Do you want to do that?
Oh, to do a giveaway?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so I have a copy of Kitty Sweet Tooth I can give away with a bookmark and a sticker. So I guess Jana has to decide how she wants to do the giveaway.
Yeah,
but
okay.
I can I will ship it out to whoever Jana tells me to.
Okay. Dave, do you have anything like that?
Sure,
Is it
yeah,
free?
I can add a Astronaut Academy splashdown.
Okay. All right. So this is everybody who's on this call right now. Those of you who stayed to the bitter end, we have a special treat. And I wanted to set this up in a way to help Dave and Abby. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this video on YouTube publicly. And you guys, if you make a comment in the YouTube videos about what your biggest takeaway was or what you're excited about regarding Abby or Dave or both of their work, we will randomly pick a winner from the YouTube comments. Or if you hashtag, now hashtagging is like not my strong suit, but Dave and Abby, do you have like hashtags for your titles of your book or that you're using to promote?
Yeah, I'm gonna just hashtag Kitty Sweet Tooth in one word.
Okay. And what about you, Dave?
I use so many hashtags. I think Astronaut Academy splashdown.
Okay. So I'm going to put it right here, but if you want to post on Twitter and like give a shout out to Abby and Dave, that also counts. So I will go on Twitter and look, and I'm just going to like put things in a hat and then pick out 2 winners basically from either YouTube comments or Twitter hashtag. And can we just like put the hashtag in, let's see, Kitty Sweet Tooth, is that right? And then Astronaut Academy splashdown.
Yeah, if you
Like
shout out my handle, just add Abby Denson.
So I guess I'm gonna try to get this video onto YouTube by the end of the day today, and so we'll pick a winner. Let's see, tomorrow is Friday, right? By I don't know, the end of the day on Friday or Saturday morning. Sound cool? All right, I'm gonna put in the chat. You guys can support Dave and Abby, and thank you, everybody. Everybody, can you unmute yourselves and say thank you to Abby and Dave?
Thank you.
This was awesome.
Thank you.
Yay! Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jana.
All right, bye.
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 Bye. Bye.
Uh,